So this morning I posted a poll. I asked everyone, would they like to see gameplay from PC side of things or from console side of things? And really, after playing with the controller on PC, there's really not that much difference, other than of course field of view, 60 frames per second, that kind of thing. But in terms of like weapon behavior, it is very similar to how it is on console, if not identical, in terms of recoil patterns, aim assist, all of those things are identical to each other. But I had a lot of people request that we review it from both perspectives, both from a mouse and keyboard and from controller. So that's what we're going to try to start doing in all of our reviews, guys. And for each of these, I will timestamp. So for instance, today's video, we're going to first talk about mouse and keyboard. You can, of course, flip toward the controller section, and we actually do have some console gameplay on the controller side of things. And of course, I'm going to give recommended roles for both mouse and keyboard, controller, and for PvE. Please bear with me, fellas. Reviews are going to start getting longer because of this process, but just tune into the timestamps. With that being said, let's talk about Last Perdition and why I like this pulse rifle. So first up, yes, it's an adaptive frame pulse, meaning intrinsically it has a well-rounded grip, reliable, and sturdy. For those out there that like bygones, Last Perdition is in the same weapon archetype at 390 rounds per minute. Now, the roll that you see here that we're using on PC, this is the vendor roll from Shaxx. You can actually get this pulse rifle upon reaching Legend inside of Valor, but beware, because after you actually reset your rank, the pulse rifle was no longer available for me to purchase, at least on my console account, so make sure you purchase this before resetting your rank. With that being said, let's go through these rolls. First up, guys, the scope that we're going with on this vendor roll is the SLO-21 post sight. It's that short zoom sight. Now for our magazine perks, we have options. You can actually go Aztecross rounds, buffing that range, and I'm not entirely against that, but I do like tactical mag here. It tacks on about 5 stability and about 10 reload, as well as increasing our mag size. Now for Last Perdition, it only increases that mag size by 3 bullets, so 1 extra burst. But with Rampage also being present on this pulse rifle, you'll be surprised how often you take advantage of that 1 extra shot. Now, of course, rangefinder is one of our traits here, extremely beneficial here on Last Perdition for so many reasons. Number 1, you're going to probably be battling against a lot of weapons in that mid-range. Most likely they're going to be either another Bygones or a Blast Furnace. Rangefinder just kind of keeps this weapon at a competitive level, especially against our aggressive pulse rifles. Now, how did this pulse rifle perform specifically from a mouse and keyboard perspective? I thought the weapon did really good, guys. I mean, straight up, I was very impressed. It doesn't have the best time to kill, and considering how nasty aggressive pulse rifles are, like Blast Furnace, go figure, or even Right Side of Wrong, these pulse rifles have a much slower time to kill in comparison to those. But it doesn't mean it's not good. Matter of fact, I think they're the most reliable pulse rifles inside of PvP in terms of always getting that guaranteed kill in 3 bursts, requiring only 5 crits and 2 body. Now, whether or not I would use this over like a God Roll Blast Furnace, I can't really answer that yet. I don't have a good rolled Blast Furnace on PC yet. I just started really getting into PC here recently, but just playing with Last Perdition and what it could do, I was extremely impressed with this pulse rifle. Now, what mod would you want to put on this pulse rifle? I actually took to Twitter earlier and was asking those questions because I really don't know how much things like targeting adjuster affects mouse and keyboard, if it even does anything. I threw it on here because that's literally the only mod I have that can benefit me inside of PvP. Whether or not there was a big difference in terms of like hit registration and hitboxes, I'm not for certain. What I can say though is that counterbalance is not needed on Last Perdition, at least not from a mouse and keyboard perspective. The weapon is super manageable, so if you have other mods that can aid whatever role you have specifically, I would try something like that. So for me on this vendor role, obviously Rampage Spec would be one of the best options. Now let's go over the roles that I would look for on PC. To me, in the magazine column, guys, either tactical mag or flared magwell. Either one of those would be just fine. They tack on a little bit more instability there, but help out in like reload speed as well as magazine size. I don't want to say you need accurized rounds in order for this pulse rifle to be good for you, because here's the thing, you're going to get to a certain level in range there where the pulse rifle, despite whatever you have there in terms of that magazine column, being a burst fire weapon, it just starts to lose hit registration. You know what I mean? Even with mouse and keyboard. So I didn't feel like accurized rounds was really aiding me all that much. And yeah, you could take the route of steady rounds to up your stability. But like I said, the recoil is already so manageable to begin with. you don't really need to overload that stability. In terms of the trait column here, I would go with Rangefinder Rampage. I mean, really, it's nasty. Other perks like Firmly Planted, Moving Target, I'm not really needing those. Again, like I said, hit registration is already so good here with mouse and keyboard. So you really want to just optimize this weapon in terms of range and then optimize it again in terms of lethality there with Rampage. So it's very obvious that the vendor role is pretty much the god role that you can get here on PC. Now moving on to the console / controller side of things. Yeah, we did plug up a controller to our PC to play with the vendor role, and it wasn't bad, but immediately I did notice that there were some drawbacks. Now first up, let's go over the role here from Graceful Huntress. Shout out to our Discord mod here for letting us get on their account and playing with this pulse rifle. This one actually comes with an SLO 12 post sight, so extremely short zoom, but greatly increases that handling speed. Now the magazine perk here is steady rounds, which is ideally what you would want on console. Now rangefinder, again, the trait here that's excellent. It counters the -5 range that we have there with steady rounds. And the final trait is full auto, which is not really needed. Guys, this is a 390 round per minute pulse. So full auto on this pulse is kind of redundant. There's so many different options that we can go with on this last column to make this a well-rounded god roll pulse. Full auto is just not one I would rely on. Now, the masterwork here is stability, which is really nice. And the masterwork that we're rocking here is counterbalance. Now, I am rocking a counterbalance with controller because the weapon does have a little more hop, right? So keeping things a little more vertical, considering that the recoil direction of this weapon is 63. A counterbalance mod here is really good. Now again, the vendor roll is also the other roll that we mess with controller. And like I said, that was when I started to see some drawbacks coming from this roll over here that was super stable, super manageable, and then jumping on PC and playing with the vendor roll with controller, I definitely started to see some deviation in my shots, and that's probably due to the fact that there's nothing on the vendor roll there that's buffing our stability. And on top of that, I didn't have a counterbalance mod present on the vendor roll on my PC account. Now with that being said, how did it perform there with controllers? I thought it did good, guys. Again, it's a solid, well-rounded pulse for both mouse and keyboard users and for controller users. I was a big fan of it. Although I will say the rolls, specifically for console, I could think of a much better option in terms of like god roll. If I wanted a pulse rifle that was just gonna go in there and just kill people 3 bursts every single time, and I just wanted to be super manageable, I would actually take the route of like either Aztecross rounds, rangefinder, and Zen moment, and maybe a stability masterwork. But notice here, guys, we're just completely speccing everything out for range. Even on console, that may sound like that's not going to be manageable, but I can promise you Zen moment is going to keep everything in line. Now the problem with choosing Zen moment over anything else in that column is that you're kind of ruining yourself in terms of lethality. You're not going to be able to take advantage of things like kill clip or rampage. I know we don't have this huge variety of deadly perks, but I will say you will be missing out on those perks if you wanted to utilize that with this pulse rifle. And a huge reason why I like Last Perdition over Bygones is specifically because you can roll things like rampage and kill clip in combination with rangefinder, whereas Bygones, it puts all of those perks in the same column. So guys, that is Last Perdition. It's nasty, it's overlooked, unfortunately. The vendor roll is already a very good roll to begin with. For my console users and people that use controller on PC, the vendor roll can still do well for you, but I would honestly go out and seek out a more stable version of this weapon. And for my PvE players out there that want to pick up this pulse rifle, the vendor roll with a rampage spec inside of PvE, definitely the route that I would go with, alongside tactical mag. So even though we're kind of giving this from a PvP perspective, the vendor roll is very much a PvE roll, or actually a PvE god roll for that matter. So guys, that is Last Perdition in our review. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this, how we structured this review. I'm kind of trying to get an idea of how we're going to start doing things going forward. We will be starting to dabble in PC as well as console, controller, mouse, and keyboard, and I definitely want to give both perspectives when reviewing weapons, especially starting next week when we get into these catalysts. So I appreciate all your feedback. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.